This time, FA Cup Special, Coventry City, Sky Blues, shooting to win.
And it's no nay never, no nay never, no more, 'cause I'll stay a wild rover forever and
more. Hello and welcome to by far the greatest team, a podcast in which football fans attempt the seemingly impossible to rank once and for all who is the greatest team of all time. It's hands down winner for me, Graham Dunn. It's obviously Oxford United. My colleague in the corner here, Jamie Rooney, would probably argue for Man United. Is that about right?
Well, firstly, hello, good evening and welcome. Graham, I have to say, it's this FA Cup special. It's a glorious sunny May day. I've got the curtains drawn as well. I've got the 50p's stacked up on my 28-inch square box television to feed the meter, the TV we rent from Radio Rentals. And we've moved the sofa. So now it's in front of the television. So I'm ready to go. And yeah, I agree. I think Manchester United are definitely a more successful team when it comes to FA Cup finals than Oxford United, I think.
Sadly, a fact I can't dispute, it has to be said. We are joined this week in this highly indulgent 1980s FA Cup loving, and all the way from the South Coast. I'm delighted, I assume, that Jamie Wilson, you are directly now on the bus, on the coach there with maybe some playing cards in, a bit of banter with a couple of the other players and sort of Tony Gubber in the seat. As if we don't have enough rabbit holes to go down. Last time you were on this pod, Jamie, we were talking about music that the teams come out to. And coincidentally, we were talking about this song off air a few days ago. Is that right, off air? But it did occur to me that Crazy Horses by the Osmonds is absolutely the perfect song to come out to, isn't it? You can imagine, like, the whoa, whoa, and then the I mean, other than the fact that it's the Osmonds, I mean, it's a brave team that would produce that one, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I love that song. I'll confess right here and now, it's on my phone, and my kids love it, and so do I. And I'm just thinking, I'm just trying to think off the top of my head a team with a horse link, and I'm just thinking Ipswich. I mean, there's a horse in the badge there, isn't there?
Oh, yes.
I mean, I'm just trying to think of a tenuous way that a team could actually
and of course, Emlyn Hughes.
Yes. Yeah, there's an argument for Ipswich.
Hughes was known as Crazy Horse, so presumably for the testimonial, he would have come out to that.
Yeah.
Mick Shannon related as well. I mean, there was a man who loved his horses. He loved horses and talking about that great striker, Lineker.
I'll tell you what, it was like he was in the ring then, wasn't it? Shannon? It sounded like he was
quite. Actually, just on Shannon, I have to say, sorry, Graham, quite easily for me, the worst ever goal celebration. That windmill right arm. I mean, please, you don't want him to score goals because it's like he's going to wheel out every single time. It's only one notch worse than the Alan Shearer non-freewheeling windmill arm out in the air.
And I've got a confession to make here, Jamie, because in the latter stages of Shannon's career, he played a season at Pompey and he did the famous windmill arm. And so, of course, me being a impressionable 10, 11-year-old playing for my school team, I did the Shannon celebration, the windmill. And I did it at school. I didn't score a huge amount of goals, but when I scored, I did the Shannon for about a year or two. Yeah, not the greatest moment in my footballing career.
That is too good. So, yeah, as Jamie mentioned there, giving any opportunity to say that Portsmouth were former FA Cup winners. Jamie, you had a little fact question about a previous time Pompey were the FA Cup holders?
Yeah, I'm curious. I'm very curious. So, for those who don't know, Jamie will definitely know this, that in 1939, Portsmouth, I think, beat Wolves in the final quite comprehensively to win the FA Cup. And then little did they know that they were going to be the custodians of this FA Cup trophy for the next 7 years because of the outbreak of the Second World War. So I'm just curious to know, what did they do with the trophy for those 7 years?
So I think, Jamie, I was always under the impression that and this is a lovely fact, of course, that all Portsmouth fans embrace, particularly in our darkest moments, that hasn't been superseded yet, shall we say. I'm sure Man City will do it at some point in the very near future, but yeah, so we love the fact that we've held the FA Cup for so long, but I always assumed that the cup was held in a safe somewhere because obviously Portsmouth was getting bombed quite heavily for those years. But let me know if you know anything different.
Well, I did a little bit of prep on it, and you're right. The Luftwaffe were targeting the naval bases in Portsmouth, so clearly the club decided we need to move the trophy in a safe bombing distance. So they moved it 10 miles up the road to a little village called Lovedene. And it went into the pub called the Bird in Hand, where it sat behind the counter whilst the pub was in operations. And then I think at night, because the landlord, who was taking his job very seriously as this guardian of this incredible trophy, the trophy to the world's oldest football competition, took it to bed with him. And so I think he went to bed with the FA Cup trophy every single night.
That's brilliant. You know what? I need to go to Lovedene and I need to go to the pub and see if they must have something there now. This is an opportunity for me to take the wife and kids out on a jaunt to Lovedene and not tell them the reason why, so that I can just have an understanding. I'm thinking blue plaque outside or something, you know?
Absolutely.
That's a great story. Love it. And who wouldn't? I'd do the same, wouldn't you? I'd love to do that.
Oh.
Let's just get make up to bed.
You're kicking the missus out for 7 years, aren't you? No, there's no room. It's just me in the cup, love.
And that's one of the key reasons why I'm taking the FA Cup to bed with me. Anyway, moving swiftly on.
Yes, indeed. So, and I think we should probably begin with a small apology for Coventry City fans who are expecting a blow-by-blow account of what a great football team they are. Because in the true traditions of FA Cup final day, we're starting on air about 6.5 hours before the game, and first half is going to be entirely made up of puff and all sorts of bits and pieces, and we're going to get onto the Coventry City in the game in the second half. So apologies for Coventry City fans, but there was a small bit of logic to this, because especially of people of our generation, but even many years, FA Cup final day was always something special, and the TV element of it in particular, it was clearly, as we've discussed only last week actually, Jamie, that only one of a handful of games that is shown live, even at that stage. So that was a great opportunity. But the TV companies definitely they really embraced it by starting hours ahead of kickoff, I think. Jamie Rooney, did you? I was searching to see if I could find a kind of an earliest start time for when the schedules began. In my mind, it might even have begun as early as like 9 o'clock at one stage.
Well, I think the same. I always thought you were waking up on that Saturday morning and you were straight into some kind of FA Cup programme. But the earliest I found actually was the 1979 FA Cup final, Arsenal versus Manchester United. And that started at 11 o'clock on the BBC, where the programmes would be all FA Cup final related in the build-up, with some of the classic normal segments that they would have to kind of entertain us for 5 or 6 hours before the game actually kicked off. And they would only break off for either news for 5 minutes or a couple of races at Lingfield, which my dad would have always appreciated, I'm sure, for those who remember the England 82 podcast. But yeah, I'm like you, Graham. I always thought you were waking up. And I think it's because I think ITV and BBC, and we probably have to stress as well, through the 70s and the 80s, they were pretty much the only channels. BBC had a supplement channel called BBC Two, but all we had was 3 channels until Channel 4 came along, and they didn't have the rights for the FA Cup. But they did for horse racing, as I can testify, because that was on in our house quite a lot. But I think the programmes like the Saturday Swap Shops and Saturday Superstores and all those kind of classic kids programmes, they kind of customised their programme towards the FA Cup. And that's probably why it felt like the FA Cup final was dominated from the morning. But I think that's just my etchy, sketchy memory rather than anything factual.
South Coast Jamie, does that chime with you?
It definitely does. Yeah, my memories as being a kid was that it was always sunny, it was always warm, and that excitement. As you say, it was the only live game you were going to see on TV. And I mean, the game we're going to get to, Coventry Spurs, that hits the sweet spot in my footballing journey and life. So I'm all over this. But yeah, I'd get up on my sketchy memory of FA Cup finals was getting up in the morning, and as soon as the TV goes on, everything is themed around the FA Cup. And then when there's a break or I get a little bit bored, I just take my ball out to the garden and kick it against the wall a few times and pretend to be whoever the main star is. My
Mick Shannon.
There I was, windmilling in the garden. Yes, but no, I clearly remember the first game I properly sat down and watched was the 1980 West Ham United Arsenal game, and yeah, I remember Joe Brooking. Time for another podcast why he goes stoop so low rather than kick it when he heads it in. But anyway, I remember that game vividly, and I was hooked from that moment on. So I loved it. Absolutely loved it, and it was a time when I wasn't able to go to games because my dad probably rightly thought he'd take me to any, because it was not a good time in terms of hooliganism and all the rest of it. So happy times. I always loved the FA Cup final day.
I think the other thing about the length of the programme is because it's quite weird. The idea, as exactly as you say, nipping outside and playing a bit of football in the back garden in between. It is one of those programmes which actually is very similar to something like I remember if you used to watch when Eurovision used to be on. You don't sit and actually watch it in any way at all. It's just something that's on in the background. And I think that's one of the things with Cup Final Grandstand. There's like, coming out, and obviously the ITV World of Sport one, come on to that, is that you probably remember it more fondly than actually nobody was sat there for ages and ages, because actually, they got hours and hours of television to fill, and like they was well, let's go and speak to so and so who's going to be playing in the Coldstream Guards at 2:00, and it's a tuba player there. But didn't your uncle once play in the 1952 final? It's really dull.
It's true. I do that again. That stirs my memories of incredibly tenuous links and bits of footage. Good stuff. I mean, Graham, you did share that wonderful Michael Aspel piece, didn't you? I don't know whether you want to talk about that. And
it is fantastic.
Is that the Michael Aspel one from 1980 where he's interviewing the wives and girlfriends on the Thames?
It's just
surreal,
fascinating, and inappropriate and joyous all at the same time. And I'll let Graham talk it through, because Graham discovered it, and I was transfixed by it in so many ways.
There's absolutely nothing misogynistic about it whatsoever.
No, I mean, it's kind of creepy, isn't it?
Very creepy, yeah.
You can imagine the production meeting over at World of Sport. So what should we do before the game? It's like, well, why don't we get all the players' wives together? And but we'll get Michael Aspel. I mean, clearly he was a man with charm, but I didn't quite realise he was quite so smarmy and charmy with the ladies as he is in that particular interview. And it's classically Partridge-esque.
It is.
Yeah.
I think what's really interesting about it is that you also see how, I mean, quite aside from that's quite misogynistic undertones, but also you see how much football has changed and the players' wives have changed, because they literally are the girl next door. There's no footballers' wives about them.
No.
And actually, the interview, I'm not even sure where I think the interview's taking place outside in a car park somewhere. There's not even, it's not like a lovely hospitality lounge. So it's really strange seeing them in those settings. And you clearly wouldn't get that now.
It does. Jamie's absolutely right. It does feel creepy in parts, and I'm sure it's just a sign of the times. And obviously, this is 40 odd years ago. Things have moved on in all the right ways. But I think there's a moment where he's interviewing, I think it's Trevor Brookin's wife, and then he kind of inappropriately says, "So I'm sure you cheer him up when Trevor gets home after a loss," and it's suggestive, it's implied, and it's inappropriate. And she deals with it absolutely amazing. She's like, well, no, he's happy at home with me. We don't even talk about football. And it's almost like Aspel doubles down on it as well. It's like, oh, I'm going to get you here. But she deals with it with incredible grace. But it does feel a bit creepy, I have to say. You wouldn't, unless you're, like you said, Graham, unless it's Alan Partridge, you're not going to get away with it this day.
And he grills Liam Brady's wife on whether Liam Brady's going to move in the summer, and she's surprisingly open about it. Yeah, I think he might be going to Italy.
But this kind of it just highlights the kind of weird programs you had in the build-up, wasn't it? As you say, coming back to your point, you just have these tenuous links. I mean, just odd, but utterly fascinating to watch it. A kind of glimpse into history about how things were back then. And we haven't even got to it's the knockout bit either.
Yes.
Great theme tune.
But the other bit that it really ties into, and I think this is one of the things that did make the cup final coverage so special, is it's one of the few times you lift the lid and actually get to see footballers in a sort of normal life. It's not normal life at all, because they're staying in a super posh hotel in the home counties and heading to Wembley that day. But it's the closest, because you get to see them in a sort of natural environment, and you get to see them kind of off camera in a way which other than someone making an appearance on Question of Sport, you didn't really get to see very much in those days. So, and definitely the hotel, the interviews at the hotel, and again, I kind of clear memories of sort of, they'd link up with Tony Gubber beforehand I'm convinced they went to him at the crack of dawn. It's like, as the sun is rising behind me, I'm about to head in as I surprise Frank Stapleton. It's not...
Did Gubber do anything else other than that? I only ever imagined him on doing FA Cup and the occasional sports night kind of game that nobody was really interested in. But Gubber's primary aim was to be on the bus before and after the cup final. I'm sure that was in his CV.
So I don't know if a Man United Jamie remembers this. I definitely have a memory of this, that Tony Gubber, who I think he's definitely from Manchester, and I think he might have been a Man United fan. And I've searched for this. I haven't been able to find the footage, but I'm absolutely sure this happened. That in was it the 85 one or 86 when Norman Whiteside curls in the
85. Yeah, 85 against Everton.
I remember them a bit later on showing some footage of Tony Gubber almost doing a cartwheel. He is sat. So you'd have the photographers and it's people sat behind the goal.
Yep.
And they obviously had the pitch side reporters, and Tony Gubber is there, and I think he sort of falls over in excitement at going in. I'm sure I remember this.
I think your memory, not to sound like Darth Vader, your memory serves you well. I mean, it's a pointless little nugget, but I actually worked with his niece for a short while. And I was quite happy to talk about Tony Gubber, and he was a Manchester United fan. I think your memory of that, I think you can see that footage as well online of him celebrating behind the goal. And it is brilliant. I mean, it's a brilliant goal. Anyone would want to celebrate it, unless you're Neville Southall, of course. So.
I think the interviews at the hotels are... And they had an extra excitement for us, particularly in Germany, because they were quite regularly staying at very local hotels to where we are. So the Complete Angler in Marlow, I was living in Marlow at the time, that's where they would stay. So I think, and even I think in this cup final, Coventry City are staying in a hotel.
Yeah, and they're also practicing more inappropriate behaviour. They're at the Complete Angular, and there's for those of you who know Marlow, it's got the River Thames, and the Complete Angular is right opposite the church. And on the day of the cup final, there's a wedding going on at the church, and the bride and groom come across to the Complete Angular to meet the team, and then the bride, who's literally just got married, offers Brian Kilcline, and I have to confess here, with Brian Kilcline, obviously we can go through the players. I for some reason in my head, since a youngster, maybe I was just like imprinted with stereotypes, but I always thought he was Scottish. I don't think he's even been to Scotland. For some reason, I always thought he was Scottish, and I think that's just me with an imprinted kind of, stereotype that has been ingrained in there from an early age that I can't shake off. But he actually gets offered the bride's garter and he takes it and he takes a kiss, and then I think the bride is quite happy to give all of the players a kiss as well. I mean, I don't know how that marriage got on, but I mean, it didn't go off to a good start.
Oh, that's brilliant.
The other part, which is very closely linked to the hotel scenes, is definitely the coach trip. And again, it's a weird sort of thing to think. Well, which part of this should we? How can we build the atmosphere up? Oh, we'll have someone on board the players' coach as they're coming in, and I sort of vividly remember that being part of the routine. And South Coast Jeremy, I think you had a memory of this as well. I can't remember which final it was. Maybe it was the Liverpool-Everton one. It was definitely the Liverpool one. But I definitely remember one where Steve Nicol, the Liverpool centre-back or full-back, was doing impressions. That was sort of the whole thing. And again, I've searched for this footage because I wanted to see, were they any good? But did this happen? I definitely think this happened. You can back me up, surely.
I really want to back you. I love the story. And when you mentioned it to me, I loved it so much. I went searching the internet to find Steve Nicol doing impressions. And I did find a lot because he's doing, and my research in this rabbit hole many weeks ago, for not for any podcast reasons, just purely my own, because he does these sort of expert summarising on one of the other TV channels now, doesn't he? Well, he certainly did. And I was finding, and he's quite a fun presenter. And I thought, and it's one of those tantalising mysteries, because you think, I watched him and he's quite funny, and I'm thinking there's an impressionist in there. There is, and we've just got to find those. If we can find that, that's the gold dust. It's like looking for the Loch Ness Monster. The rumour is it's there. I think if we search long and hard enough, we will find Steve Nicol doing impressions. It'll be a wonderful moment.
You are right. He's been a pundit with, I think, Craig Burley in the US on some kind of versions of ESPN. And not always, but when I have seen him, he's done a very good impression of a grumpy pundit as well.
I like to think he's doing really awful, Mike Yarwood style. So I like to think he's still doing Frank Spencer even then. Jeremy Rooney, the coach journey in, was that sort of big part for you?
Well, yes, because it was all part of the build-up, and you get to see the players walk in, and you get to kind of sense their body language and their suits and what they're drinking and what they're eating. But for the television, it was absolute gold dust TV. And I think it was the BBC that introduced the whole kind of tele-helicam that I think Des Lynam called it, where they'd have a helicopter with a camera and follow it. Like an aerial shot, like an expensive drone all the way to the stadium. And they'll be saying, and there they're going past the junction at Edgware Road, notoriously there for traffic on a Friday night. It's like throwing in this pointless commentary that means nothing just to fill the time while we watch this coach slowly head towards Wembley Stadium.
That's so true, isn't it? And this was way ahead of the O.J. Simpson chase on the freeway, wasn't it? So the BBC were way ahead on this. But you're absolutely right. I used to get transfixed by watching a coach from an aerial shot from a helicopter getting stuck in traffic for 3 hours, and my memory serves right. They keep going back to it. You could just see how far the coach had progressed. It's brilliant. They've got to bring that back.
They did mix it up early in the decade. In 1983, can you remember how Brighton Hove Albion travelled to Wembley?
Jimmy, I definitely remember Jimmy Mealy. I don't know if if it was just him or the players, but it's helicopter, wasn't it?
Yeah, I like to think it was all the players, but you might be right. It might be just the coach. But yeah, they had the big deal of travelling by helicopter.
I mean, it's a long way, isn't it? Though, you know, Brighton to London. You can see why.
I like to think with the O.J. Simpson situation that when news broke that they were going to have to, someone was going to have to have this high-profile car chase to film from high above. There was a guy who said, "Oh, we should get John onto it. He, used to do the FA Cup bus, Cup final grandstand. He's never let it out of his sight."
I just had this vague recall as well. It's almost, maybe I've just made this up. It's just the pointless stuff that they used to say, Des Lionel or Brian Moore used to say, when the coach would go under a tunnel and disappear. They'd tell you, and the coach has now disappeared under a tunnel, where we expect him to come out the other side in a matter of moments. And you're like, oh my God, Dad, they've gone under a tunnel.
And again, this was sort of part of it was, because you're absolutely right. I hadn't really. I was so obsessed by Steve Nichols' impressions and searching for that. I hadn't really sort of really dived into it. But it is such a bizarre thing. And they would always, whenever they, it was such a banal list of events when, Des is going through where, 11:15 players breakfast, 12:05 the Contra City bus leaves. 12:35 it arrives at Wembley. It's kind of.
True.
I think as well because they had a lot of kind of airtime. But I'm just assuming that whilst they're showing the footage of that, they're also then cutting back to people in the studio to say, what would the players be feeling and thinking right now or doing right now on the bus? Whilst showing footage of what the players are thinking, doing, and talking about on the bus. I think one of the other things that you would really look forward to as part of this is that there's obviously a celebrity element to this. So I do remember them interviewing various celebrities who were coming to the game and so forth. Stars from each famous supporters from each team. But there was also a big tradition around having comedians on this show, didn't they? And we will talk about, when kickoff comes and we get to 3 o'clock and start actually doing Coventry City, what channel are you actually going to watch the game on, which is kind of a sort of a big question. Because I think in that lead up, you are flitting between it a little bit. Mm-hmm. I would probably start it on BBC One for tradition's sake, but you're flipping between. And when they're interviewing the tuba player from the Coldstream Guards, you're going back into several. And of course, the highlight bits are usually, you flip, oh, hang on, they're doing the journey to the cup round 3, and they're going to show some more clips of that, and maybe that's a highlight or bits and pieces around that. But you did see the different approaches, and the grandstand seemed to have kind of a moment where they'll have whoever the comedian of the day was. So I remember one year where they have Smith and Jones doing the head-to-heads at various segments, and that's obviously something to watch. Whereas ITV, I think World of Sport would embed them a bit more. So Tarby was the really obvious one. He was kind of a regular member of kind of almost part of the presenting team, wasn't he?
Yeah, no, you know what, Graham, you mentioned Tarbuck, and that's the name that immediately sprung to mind there. I don't know whether that's because Liverpool seemed to be in a number of cup finals that I remember at an earlier age, but yeah, Tarby was always involved. But of course, leading on from comedians, of course, there's some amazing footage of the great Bruce Forsyth in one of the preamble Wembley Cup finals, and again, I don't think if you remember that, and it's well worth a watch on YouTube. But seeing Forsyth come out actually onto the pitch doesn't he? And he does the old run up the pitch, and I think he shoots at goal, doesn't he? I think he shoots and scores it, and then runs back to the halfway line, and then gives it the old Brucey stance and a few gags, and you're thinking, it's amazing, it's brilliant, it's crazy. But yeah, I loved it as a kid, loved it.
Also highly impressive to have your own catchphrase being said back to you. So when you do the "nice to see me," it's nice to see you, to have kind of a whole series of fans do it. You can. You've got an audience in the palm of your hand.
Also, if he fancied a bit of punditry afterwards, and if he asked, was it a good game? He's definitely got that going as well, hasn't he? Good game. I think the celebrity aspect of the FA Cup final build up gives a brilliant insight into British culture at that particular moment, because it's not just the comedians, and you're right, Tarbuck is there. He seems to be there all the time. But you've also got snooker players, you've got the Barry Hearn, reeling out his Steve Davis and Dennis Taylor and all of his matchroom staff. You've got soap stars. You've got boxers. Lloyd Hunnigan and Terry. I can't remember his name now. He's gone. But it really is Terry Marsh. Yeah, John Conti and Terry Marsh. But it really is a subset of British culture at that particular moment. And of course, you've got Chaz and Dave.
Yeah. And we will get on to them. It's funny you should mention the snooker, because I absolutely remember, and I am guessing in my mind, I might have the wrong game and partners, but I think it might be Liverpool-Everton Cup final, where there is a part of the pre-match entertainment is a snooker doubles game with Gary Lineker and Willie Thorne, of course, who he was well-established friends with, and Mark Lawrence and someone. I'm sure it's Loro.
Yeah,
and that it's kind of the entertainment. It's a snooker doubles game. I'm sure this happened.
You're absolutely right. It did. I remember this as well. And I don't know whether I want it to be Tony Knowles, but I think it was Tony Knowles and Mark Lawrence. And even if it wasn't Tony Knowles, I want it to be Tony Knowles. But I seem to remember, because Lineker's a real shark, isn't he? Because he can play. He can play cricket to a very high standard. He can play snooker to a very high standard. And I seem to remember him absolutely wiping the floor with everybody in that game. So yeah, that definitely happened. Definitely happened. Great moment. I've forgotten all about that.
Yeah, it kind of leads into, because Graham, you were saying you're switching between the channels, and on ITV, which was the massive draw, because these guys who were at the height of their fame at the time was Saint and Greavesy, and they really embraced the alternative sports stars. So there's, I think there's a segment, I can't remember which cup final it is, where Greavesy goes off and gives Gary Lineker a game of snooker. He'd always go off and do his own little thing. I think he trained with Watford, and Graham Taylor was putting through his paces during the build up in the 1984 FA Cup final. Then he plays Gary Lineker at snooker, and he gets absolutely wiped. I think something like 140 points versus 2. Absolutely no chance. And then, but Greavesy would always be that kind of that kind of wingman, because he did lots of things as well. He'd go off and meet the boxers. He went off training with Mike Tyson as part of the FA Cup final build-up on the Saint and Greavesy show. Jimmy Greaves has gone off to America to meet Mike Tyson to spar with him in the ring. That was part of the build-up.
You know what?
Absolutely irrelevant.
Incredible. I love it.
And the beauty, of course, was Saint and Greavesy. And you're right, they sort of totally revolutionised that football focus kind of era, where you had, a very staid BBC Bob Wilson style. And bear in mind, Football Focus was about as humorous as football on the BBC got at that stage. There might be a slightly light option towards the end, but Saint and Greavesy revolutionised it. And of course, what I think the thing that really works or lifts that programme, I mean, obviously, other than Greavesy, is a deeply funny man, and the Saint actually is a good foil for him. But it's obviously that it's another show where the cameramen laugh. So you had those programmes where you just got like 6 or 7 people in the studio, but they are genuinely finding it hysterical.
St. Greasy was addictive telly for me. I couldn't get enough of it because you're right. We lived it for a period where football programs were rare. Live football was rare and Football Focus was a massive deal. And then you've got this ITV Saturday morning, Saturday lunchtime St. Greasy show that comes along. And it's like, give me more, lapping up because it was an alternative way to deliver football content. Loved it.
Did they do the spitting image puppets of St. Greasy in the FA Cup build-up one year?
Yes.
I'm trying to remember if that's the case, but that sticks in my mind of putting on St. Greasy, and I think it was an FA Cup day, and it was the spitting image versions of them that opened up the presenting, which always made me laugh.
I think as well, that I can't remember which cup final it was, it might have been 88, where Jimmy Greaves is in the studio and he's got the Bobby Robson spitting image puppet on his lap and he's controlling his head. And Ian St. John's gone, Greavesy, who you picked up there? And it's like, well, I just bumped into Bob. And, but he can't do the impression. All he can do is nod and look and that's it. But the puppet's huge. The puppet is as big as blooming Jimmy Greaves. It's amazing. Spitting image. I mean, I could do a whole podcast on spitting image, Graham.
Yes, that's well worth it. St. Greasy, you're right. They kind of lifted the content, and I think ITV always had that slightly less establishment feel about it. Hence that. They'd let Michael Aspel flirt his way around the players' wives before the kick-off. But the BBC would always be a little bit more sensible and regimented. But obviously they did after a fair while, again in the heyday of Des Lynam. And, you have this fabulous anchor for it. And in the 87 Cup final, you have a classic Des Lynam introduction to the whole thing where he kind of recreates every scene and is eventually it ends with a shot of him in the bath with the FA Cup or something as a memory, and just classic Lynam.
He was silk, wasn't he? He was so good. I remember when I think Gary Lineker replaced him on Match of the Day. I think Gary Lineker is a very confident, for all the right reasons, individual, was super nervous because you're replacing royalty, aren't you, really? And Des Lynam was just, what a man who could deliver a line, and he looked so amazing as well all the time. Yeah, and he was one of the reasons why you'd want to watch the BBC coverage, because you want a bit of Des in a very non-sexual way as a young boy, I will point out.
The other thing, given that they're padding this out for multiple hours without any actual content, is how much onus they put on the meet the teams. So that would be a big sort of segment, and again in the build-up, I say, and at 12:55, Gary Stevens is going to take you through the Spurs team, and it's kind of as if this was, and I guess you get a bit of an insight, but this is the mid-80s. I mean, broadly, it wasn't a squad game then. Everyone broadly knew the starting 11 bar, one player.
Yeah, it's true. No, just to add to Graham's point, no, you're absolutely right, because you just forget you don't have the Sky News 24/7 coverage on the players all the time. So this is the only time, unless you bought Shoot or Match, you got any kind of player insight into what they were really like. Yeah, it was, again, as a kid, it's like, oh wow, they're talking to Nico Clausen and he's foreign. Because of course, back in the day, most of the teams were all, from the British Isles, weren't they? Incredible. Yeah, I used to love it.
I totally agree. I was going to say pretty much the same thing. And it's the reason why I loved the Meet the Players bit, because you did get that insight. And I mean, Jamie's referencing Sheet Magazine, which is fantastic, because the only insight you had on these players was, that little kind of card that they had in Sheet Magazine with their favourites. And, all I knew about footballers at that point was that their favourite TV programme was Only Fools and Horses. Their favourite food was fish and chips. And their favourite film star was Raquel Welch. And here we are getting a bit more insight into what they like.
Yeah. And I can't help thinking that some of them weren't quite true, the older I've got.
Definitely so. It is interesting that you touched on it earlier, the kind of variety of special shows that they would put on with cup final themes. So, it wasn't just cup final snooker doubles. They would have a popular theme or a cup final theme to a regular show. I definitely remember a cup final question of sports. You touched on it. I can't remember which one of you was touching it earlier. There was definitely a cup final. It's a knockout back in the day.
There was. We should probably just move on from that, really, shouldn't we? But just make this a touch point, if I can say touch point. But move on from that.
But I think it was topical, though, wasn't it? Whatever was topical at that moment was what they would read out, and it was mostly the BBC that would do it, as from my memory. And it was almost like self-promotion. They've got these programs that are going on, like It's a Knockout, then Mastermind, then Question of Sport. And I think they were just promoting their own television programs, because the Cup Final Mastermind I think they only did it 3 or 4 times from the late 70s through to the early 80s. So it wasn't something that was a regular feature. It would get replaced by something else in the early 80s, which would then get superseded by something else. It was quite topical.
I think I remember the Cup Final Mastermind around about 80, 81. I think the West Ham Arsenal, I'm sure I remember there being one on that.
If you're interested, I've got a couple of Mastermind style quiz questions for you both, FA Cup final related, if you want to go for it. I think there's 2. I think the first one's fairly okay. I think you're going to get this. The second one, I think you might need to think about, but I think you're going to get it, both of you. So question number 1, Sunderland in 79, Villa in 81. Who was 80?
Sunderland 79. Okay, so 79 is Man United, Arsenal, isn't it? I didn't think either of them played. There must have been the semi-final. Oh, hang on. Oh no, I was wondering if the cup replay was at Villa Park for 81. No, I'm out of answers. Jamie, anything from you?
No, sorry. You clicked slightly there, Jamie, on the question. So do you mind just repeating that for me?
Sunderland in 79, Villa in 81. Who in 80?
Well, at least I understand the question. I'm not sure I have the answer. I don't know. I'm going to call out on that one. I don't know.
I'll put you out your misery. I thought you were going to get this. So, and Jamie, you already mentioned the answer earlier.
Hang on. No, stop. I've got it. At the last moment. Magnus, do I have a spare moment to answer the question? It's the goal scorer, of course, isn't it? Alan Sunderland and Ricky Villa.
Yes.
Oh, no.
Get in.
So,
get in.
Absolutely. Brooking in 80. That's...
Back in there.
1-0.
Yeah. So that would have been the answer to, yeah.
Yeah, you referenced it earlier.
I did. No, I was just trying to understand your yeah, got it.
That's your 1-0 up on this one now. I'm hoping that Graham does get this and you don't, because I don't have a tiebreaker, so we're just going to have to toss a coin in that old-fashioned way of who wins. So question number 2. Gary Stevens played in the FA Cup final in 1983, in 1984, in 1985, in 1986, and in 1987. How is that possible?
I love it. I do know the answer.
Yeah, I think I do as well. I'll let you go to give the answer, Graham, and I'll answer honestly if I know the reason. If I have the same answer as yourself, go for it.
So Gary Stevens definitely plays for Brighton in 1983, and I think Everton's Gary Stevens plays 84, and then by 85 has Gary Stevens joined Spurs? No. No, it'd be Everton again.
Yeah.
And in 86, and then by 87, Gary Stevens, the Brighton Gary Stevens.
That's correct.
Spurs.
That's right. That was where I was.
I think you both got that. So I'm going to declare the result 2-1 to South Coast Jamie. An away victory.
Yes.
What was really good around this time as well, around the FA Cup, and it certainly helped that because there was so much attached to this one game that you have single facts. This had, even more resonance, I think. So, Brian Talbot becoming the first player to win the FA Cup for different teams in consecutive years. Kevin Moran being the first player to be sent off, which is extraordinary, really. 85, and that's the first sending off. Quite entertainingly, we'll come on to it in the game, but when Brian Kilcline rather brutally takes Gary Mabbott out, Ron Atkinson, who is pretty livid about the original decision, says that's roughly where Kevin got his card. He's clearly not let it go.
Just to kind of round up on the mastermind thing. Sorry, Graham. There's one thing. It's a bit of a teaser. I've already got guilt complex as I'm going to lead into this, but there's a Monty Python sketch back in the day where I can't remember who. So in the mastermind chair, you've got someone like, I can't remember who it is. Some well-known brain. I should really know who this is. That makes the story a lot more better. It's like Plato or something like that. I can't really remember. But so you've got this incredible brain sitting in the mastermind chair, and he's being questioned by the quizmaster Magnus Manderson, played in this Monty Python sketch. And the question that tricked him was, how many times has Coventry City won the FA Cup? And at this particular moment, when the show was going out in the 70s, of course, the answer is 0. And it's a trick question at the time, so it completely bamboozles, to insert name in the edit afterwards, which I'll do. But obviously, as we're talking about now, that question is completely redundant. So if Monty Python were to redo this sketch, I think they could insert Oxford United as the new Coventry City, as the trick question. How many times have Oxford United won the FA Cup?
It's tiresome, isn't it? It's tiresome.
All of that's going to be edited out, isn't it? All of that's going to go.
It was some of our best stuff as well. It's all going to go.
As you know, I'm pretty determined we were doing the Milk Cup special. That's always been a much bigger cup final. When I was sort of trying to remember other kind of things that formed part of this, in my mind, and I am a bit flummoxed by this, because in my mind they would do the goal of the season competition during the cup final day. Although the '87 cup final, Keith Houchin's diving header is goal of the season there. So obviously, there's no way they can't have been right unless they sort of changed their mind and showed 10 other goals in the warm-up. No, we're going to give it to somebody who wasn't in the competition.
And wasn't this back in the day where you were encouraged to phone in your top 3?
It was postcard, wasn't it?
Put on a postcard your top 3. I think maybe even before the telephone. I think it was postcards. Yeah, you would you'd have a week to send in your postcards of your top 3. And the winner will get drawn out of a hat. They don't do that or the phone calls anymore. I'm sure it's got nothing to do with the fact that they were fixed.
You would eventually get to the precipice of the game. Again, you get that pre-match kind of entertainment. You get the Bide with Me. You've got the Coldstream Guards. You've had the players. Oh, sorry, how have I forgotten this? Of course, the key bit is you have the clips of the players walking on the pitch in their suits. How have I forgotten this? I think that whole thing has been ruined by the Liverpool suits, because everyone immediately thinks of Fowler, McManaman and Redknapp in their shocking white suits.
The Spice Boys.
And again, you would have Gubba down one end interviewing the Coventry players, and of course, all those interviews they'd all be dragging up those loose kind of connections, which would all be. And I believe your uncle, didn't he have a funny Wembley connection? He said, oh yeah, he was here for the 1957 Burnley game, and it's rare that there'd be any. But as a general rule, once they had found a fact about one player like that, and the irony is, you've never even been to Wembley before today. No, this is the first time I've ever came. I could have come in 1978, but I missed out because of that. And of course, that fact would then be trotted out if the player had done anything during the game, it would always be trotted out, in that moment. And of all the people, Brian Talbot who didn't make the cup final three, whatever it is. So you would have, each fact becomes even more precious in a sort of, this is the pre-Jeff Stelling era.
No, you're so, I've forgotten all about that, Graham. I have really strong memories of live footage of the players walking out and literally poking the turf with their feet as they walk. I mean, the groundsman just wouldn't let them do it these days, would they? But you're just wandering around, just like as though they've never seen a football pitch before. So this is a football pitch, and there's goals at either end and everything, and it's utterly bizarre, utterly bizarre. And as you say, I think they since the white suit incident, they've kind of shied away from that. And I'm really not sure the players. I don't think I've ever seen it anyway. Recently, players walking out onto the Wembley turf for a cup one. I'm going to look out for it, the one coming up.
Well, if they did, they'd be out there with their Beats headphones, wouldn't they? Unable to listen to.
Yeah, pre-Beats headphones and this era we're talking about. What is also bizarre is that when they were wearing their suits, or they'd all have a carnation, so they'd all look like they're going off to a wedding, and they've just rocked up to a football match by chance.
Well, of course, in Brian Kilcline's case, he'd already been to a wedding that morning.
Do you know what, as well? This, again, just going on the Michael Aspel inappropriate behaviour, and this is somebody we're going to talk about in a very positive sense. When Coventry have won the FA Cup, sorry to give any spoilers away for those who didn't know that, who are listening up until this point, but when they've won the FA Cup, Jimmy Hill, the great Jimmy Hill, who we're going to talk about, is interviewing the players afterwards. And he asked Brian Kilcline, I believe you met the bride and she gave you a garter. And he's like, yeah, and he's being quite, complimentary about the thing. And then Jimmy Hill continues the inappropriate nature right at the very end of the day. And he's like, well, did you get her number? No! No!
I've got more respect for the Hill now.
What is wrong with the world?
So I think we've probably teased Coventry fans long enough in the great tradition of the FA Cup and having built our pre-match entertainment. So after the break, we will talk about Coventry City themselves. So the second half of this is actually not going to be immediately on this. We got a little carried away in our cup final. You could tell we were having a lot of fun with this one. And we decided we didn't really want to cut this down or turn this into an epic. So I'm afraid you're going to have to wait one more week to hear the second half of this podcast and Coventry City and their incredible team. So we will be back next week with Coventry City FA Cup winners 86-87 Part 2.